welcome to Living Mirrors with Dr. James Cook. My guest this week is Richard Lang. Richard is the coordinator of the Shollond Trust, a charity that promotes an approach to self-discovery known as the Headless Way. This approach was developed by British architect Douglas Harding, and after studying with Douglas since 1970, Richard committed himself to sharing this work as widely as possible. He's the author of 2 books on the Headless Way, Seeing Who You Really Are and Open to the Source, Selected Teachings of Douglas Harding. You can also find teachings on this subject on Richard's YouTube channel. Today, we discuss this unique approach to gaining insight into the non-dual nature of our experience. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Okay, I'm here with Richard Lang. Richard, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Glad to be here, James. Thank you.
Yeah. So maybe we can begin with, we're going to be talking today about, I guess, the question of just, who we are really from our own perspective. And you kind of teach in this tradition, I guess a very recent tradition called the Headless Way. Perhaps we could begin with a bit of a kind of one of your experiments into kind of showing people exactly what it is we're going to be talking about.
Yes, well, the simplest experiment is the pointing experiment, but let me just put it in context, I suppose. This is noticing the difference between what you are for yourself and what you are for others. And what you are for others, we're all very used to. I'm a person, I'm Richard. If the listener or viewer was with me in a room, they'd see me sitting in a chair like you can see me on the video if you're watching that. That's your public appearance. But what are you privately? And there is a rumor that has been going around for a few thousand years, I believe, that you're not what you look like. And that what you might call your true identity, your central identity, your private self, is not at all as you appear. You are space for the world. You are timeless. And you're not in the world is in you. All of these kind of descriptions. And what the Headless Way does is present you with a range of awareness exercises. We call them experiments because they are for testing that hypothesis that you are space for the world. So it's not about believing. It's not actually even about understanding primarily, although understanding is very important. It's about experience. And even simpler than the pointing experiment is just noticing you can't see your own face now. And you don't see your own head. I don't see mine. I see it on the screen, but I don't see it right here. As I say, the simplest experiment is noticing you can't see your own face. Instead, you see the world. But to make this really clear in a way, I'm going to ask the viewer or the listener to do a simple experiment. And it sounds a bit childish. And if you're in a cafe, you probably might feel a bit embarrassed about this, but your life depends on it. Your eternal soul depends on actually taking a look for yourself. And so the experiment is you get your finger and you point out at something in front of you and look down your finger and notice you're pointing at a thing, an object. It's got color and shape and texture and all of that. See, this is very simple. So then you point at, I'm going to make it brief, you point at your other hand, say, and look along your finger at what you're pointing at, and there's your hand, you can move it, and all of that, it's got color and shape. But now point back at where I see your head, the place you're looking out of, and notice what you see, or rather what you don't see there. And I don't see my head, you see. I don't see an object here. Now I know there are sensations, and we'll come to that. And I've got a memory, and other people will tell me what's here. But in my own private first-person experience, I'm headless. Instead of my head, I see the world. And that is the basic experience, starting visually. And of course, I know others see a head here, but privately I don't. And I am wide open to the whole world and to James now. And so that's a starter, James. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. So the I think when people first hear this idea of, claiming that you have no head, it could sound kind of strange from one perspective, if they thought that you refused to believe that from the outside you look like you have a head. But this is, it's such an obvious thing that we overlook all the time, right? The thing you were saying, that we're not what we look like. I think that's a really interesting thing to sit with.
Yes, well, let me add to that, because that is the obvious objection. Well, I can't see, but I know it's here, you see. Well, I understand all that, and I'm not pretending that somehow one doesn't have a head, but where is it, you see? Now, when Douglas Harding, who wrote on having no head, when he first noticed this, I mean, this was back in about 1943, in India, he noticed this, but he'd been working on this for 10 years before, trying to work out what he was. And when he saw this, he then spent the next 10 years working out how this made sense. And one of the ways in which it makes sense is that what you are depends on the range of the observer. And what I mean is that if I were to raise the question, what am I? And in parentheses, I'd say, why ask that question? Because what you are is the place you're living from. And that affects all your actions and how you relate to others, the way that you think about yourself. So it's a very important question, apart from just pure curiosity. What am I? I've happened. What am I? You see. So anyway, if I raise this question in a sort of scientific manner, if you like, and I say to my scientist friend, I say, I'm trying to find out what I am. I feel it's very important. I'm aware that I am, but I don't want to just take for granted what I am. Please help me. And the scientist says, well, you're a person with a head on your shoulders. And I say, oh, okay, that's what I am from there, right? From there, at a distance of, say, 6 feet. And she says, yes. I said, well, come closer to me, please, and tell me what I am at a closer range. And she comes closer, and you're just a head. And then even closer, you're just an eye or a patch of skin. And then using, if you could, imagine this, the right instruments, then you'd resolve into a cell and come up to that, and you'd be protein molecules or something, and come up to that. Now you're coming up to me. You're telling me what I am. And I'm taking seriously what you tell me I am. And at very close range, and particles are almost gone. Now, so I have a head, but I have a head from 6 feet. And much closer, I'm almost gone. Now I'm at zero, you see here, and I look for myself without preconceptions. That's the experiment. And I look at where you tell me from 6 feet I have a head. And I look what I'm at zero, and I see there's absolutely nothing here. Well, actually, that completes the story, doesn't it? I've almost disappeared, and looking here, I find I have disappeared as Richard. But what I am isn't just nothing, it's awareness, full of everything with you out, you see. So that's one way of thinking about it, how it makes sense. There's some other ways I will guide you through, just different contexts. But this is what Douglas Harding worked out. And once you see this, I mean, it's not a matter of argument that you don't see your head, instead you see the world. It's just my direct experience, and no one can argue me out of it because they're not here, you know. And so, but how do I make sense of it? You see, I suppose that's the next question. And there's one way of making sense of it. Now, I could share another way, probably best to get it out of the way now. Shall I, James? Here? Okay,
yeah, that'd be great.
All right, so that is the context of what I am in space, really, in terms of what the objective observer tells me that I am. And I'll just add a bit to that, because it's so interesting and it makes sense of so many other disciplines, actually. I mean, it's a new way of seeing yourself, because if my scientist friend backs back to where I appear as a whole human being, no longer particles, but a whole human being, but keeps on saying, well, why don't I see what you are from further away, Richard? And then my family comes into view in the background, and then my city, you see, if looking from an airplane, and then even further away from the International Space Station, I'm a planet. And further away, if you could imagine from the next star, I'm a star, and then a galaxy. So I have layers like an onion, and I need every one of these layers to sit here and breathe and talk. Obviously, I need this body, but I need my lungs and the cells that make up my lungs, you see, and I need the molecule. I need the whole thing, but I also need my atmosphere and my sunlight, and no doubt, obviously the sun couldn't exist without the galaxy and all that. So it's one system. And the question is, what is at the center of this system, this living, evolving system? Well, you are, you see. Each of us is. Now, what is it? And the great religions say, well, at center, you are the one. One consciousness. Well, look, I say, oh, that's right. That's right. But now, with the advent of science, you see, we can understand this not in terms of Dante's layers of being or Plato's ideas, but in terms of science, which fits in with, with what they say. So that's the thrilling, because there's so much more in that, but that's thrilling context to understand one's nature in. But the other one is developmental. And here's a way of thinking about it, that there are 4 stages of your life. There's the baby, the child, the adult, and the seer. And I'm going to talk in sort of headless terms. It's a jargon, isn't it, for communication. But the baby is headless for itself, pre-verbal. You don't know you are headless when you're, month old, less, bit more, whatever. Pre-verbal. So you're just open, headless, single eye, open to the world. No idea what you look like. And when your mother appears, you're just space for your mother. You don't think about it in these or in any terms, obviously. But you look in the mirror, that's not you. You learn that's another child there. But you're just open, that large space of the world. So that's stage 1. But from day 1, your parents and everyone else starts reflecting back what you are from 6 feet, which is a baby, right? You're not a baby at 0. You're this open space, but at 6 feet, you're a baby. They reflect that back to you, keep telling you that you are a nice little baby, you see. And gradually, through language and gesture and through the mirror, you learn that you have an appearance. And you look in the mirror and you learn that's you. And what you learn to do, and you can imagine this, is you learn the appearance next to you. They say, well, you see that face there, that belongs here on your shoulders where you can't see it. And you need to know that in order to know who we're talking to. To put it in really simple terms, right? You need to know what you look like. You've got all these sensations, but you don't see anything there. So look in the mirror. Imagine to reach into the mirror, you see, get hold of that little face there, little. Imagine pulling it out, flipping it the other way around, making it bigger and putting it on and wearing it like a mask. And now go around aware of this mask you can't see. And for example, you have to learn this. You have to learn where to put your food. Now you can, if you attend now to the sensation of your mouth, you can't see your mouth. And as a baby, you haven't yet got the image of what your mouth looks like. You see, you've just got the sensation, which could be, it's like the Cheshire Cat, isn't it? I don't know. The sensation could be as wide as the room. But you look in the mirror and you see this tiny little mouth. So what you got to do is imagine pulling that image out, flipping it the other way around, because it's the wrong way around. It's tiny, make it bigger, and marry it to the sensation of your mouth. So you know where to put your food, right? You've got to imagine the mouth there. Imagine your nose, imagine your forehead. You've done all that. Where do you get that image of your back of your head from? You see, I touch my head now. You can try. You touch your head and you say, well, I'm touching my head. But actually, on present evidence, my hand disappears and there are sensations in awareness. Now, how do I learn that that is a hand touching a head? Well, I look on the screen, you see, or in the mirror, or someone tells me, and then I take that image and marry it to the sensation. Now, that's really smart. That's as if you're going out and putting yourself in someone else's head and looking back through their eyes and seeing what they see, and then taking that on at center, you see. Now, the first stage of the baby is that you have no idea. All this, your back is not a back, it's a sensation in awareness. How long is that sensation? Your right foot isn't your right foot. It's a sensation floating in awareness, you see. It will, in time, become your right foot, but hopefully. But at the moment, it hasn't. So the first stage of the baby. Now, this gives you insight into what it's like to be a baby, because now, when you do the experiments, you see you're looking at a single eye, your hand disappears into open space, you don't move, the world moves through you. Well, that's what you were like with a baby, except you haven't yet got the added information from others in the mirror about your appearance. So you were just first person. But you can't function just first person. You have to become aware of your appearance and take that on board. And that is what growing up is all about. So the second stage of the child is where you are getting quite a good idea of what you look like, and your name and your age and your gender and your nationality and where you live and, the background. You're going out and seeing yourself against the background of your family. That's my family. Or where you live is seeing yourself against the background of your city or your country. You see, that you're taking on board, you're owning that. Now, here's a funny little thing to imagine. Am I doing all right, James? Yes?
It's perfect, yeah.
Okay, right. Psychologists, take note. There's a new way of understanding our development, you see. So you imagine you're a little infant and you're talking to your friend, completely speculative, and you say to your friend, this idea of imagining your head on your shoulders, and your friend says, yeah, I know. Yes, I have come across that. And taking your image from the mirror and imagining you're behind it and going around imagining you're behind it without the mirror, you see. And you say to your friend, I can do it for about 2 seconds and then I forget, right? Because my default position is being headless and at large and still in space for the world and wearing everyone's face, and just being open, you see. And your friend says, I know, I'll never do it. I'll never be able to do it. It's just too hard, and it's so much work. I'd rather just be nothing and be empty, you see. Like the baby, But see, what happens is 24/7, you get feedback. You can't avoid it. You can't get out of it. And actually, you want to take it on because it's a ticket for joining into society. Because if you remain headless without any idea of your appearance, you couldn't function, you see. So you do, anyway, there's no alternative, but you do want to. It's a great adventure. So childhood, you're moving in and out, you're naturally default headless, and then you put your head on, then you forget, then you put it on, then you forget, and you just play unself-consciously until someone says, hey, and you get reminded by gesture and word and responsibility, You can't take responsibility for things you do unless you realize that you're a person, All right, so that's the child. And you're in two worlds, and it's a marvelous time, really, because you have that freedom and unself-consciousness mostly, and carefreeness, but you're beginning to join in the game, as it were. Now, the feedback goes on 24/7, so that by the time you're adolescent and a young adult, you're completely identified with the one in the mirror. I mean, the infant looks in the mirror, that, you know, goes and kisses the little baby there. The child is playing in front of the mirror, you know, playing with and putting on and back and forth, you see. Now the adult, you look in the mirror, you don't think twice, that's you. It's just straight on. I mean, you're walking around as if you are the one in the mirror, as if you are your third person appearance, you see. And you overlook now your headlessness. Now, you see, if you're a child and you say to your teacher, I can't see my head, it's very hard, I just feel open. And your teacher will say, oh, don't be stupid. Repress it, humiliate you, indicate it is mad, wrong, regressive, you know, all of that. Put it down. You don't bring that up again. You know, and all your little friends say, things haven't got ahead. You see, that's the last time you mention it. In some form or other, we all know that, I think. Anyway, third stage is the adult, where you now act as if you're a person, with every fiber of your being. Now, you see, this is developmentally, the way that you think about yourself is the same as the way you think about others. Because now that you believe that you're in your body, in your head, behind your face, that you're small, that you are what you look like, you believe everyone else is the same. And you treat everyone else as the same. And you treat everyone as if they're a separate being, you see, and just the same as you, and they're born and they'll die, and all of that. Now that is what society is. And that is absolutely vital, you know, that's what society is. But you can see that in this third stage, you're completely overlooking and rubbishing your first person experience of being wide open, your true nature. So you've gone completely away from it. Now, if you're fortunate, for whatever reason, you come across the experience of your first personhood again, which has always been there. And it might be your own curiosity, you might just stumble on it, I don't know, for whatever reason. Now, it looks different now from when it did when you were a baby or an infant. It's the prodigal son. To appreciate home, what do you know of England, if only England you know? You have to go away to come back to appreciate home. You have to go away from your true nature, which you had without any cluttering up when you were a baby, to go away and repress it and lose it in a way, so that you can come back in the next fourth stage of this here, where you really appreciate the difference. And that's what the experiments are for. And it's not a long, you know, getting your head on is painful and it takes years and you have to keep upgrading. You know, I'm looking at the image on the screen now of myself, you see, on Zoom with James, and I'm different from what I was yesterday, you know, in subtle ways. And so I have to upgrade, update my image of myself, and you have to do that all the time. And someone says something about you and you haven't thought about that about yourself before, and you've got to add that in, because everyone's view of you is valid from where they are, you see. So but at the same time, now in the fourth stage, you're also aware of this freedom, this openness. And now the fourth stage is you've got the baby, which is headless, but you don't know about your appearance. The child, where you're in and out, learning about your appearance, but still living from your freedom. The adult, where you've repressed awareness of your true nature, and you're living just as if you are what others say you are. And now that seer, you are both. You're aware both of what you are. I'm aware of being Richard, separate from James, but I'm also aware of being the space that includes Richard and James. So being at the fourth stage is not repressing now awareness of your appearance, which is impossible. And why would you want to do that? Well, the reason why people want to do it is they think that that is the necessary step in order to be aware of your true nature, to get enlightened. Well, it's not. You just, excuse me, you see the difference between your appearance and your reality. How am I doing, James? Yeah.
It's excellent. Yeah.
I'm just rambling on.
No, it's wonderful. And the in that picture, it's it really fits with our kind of scientific picture as well, right? As you were kind of pointing to what you look like from different distances, it's it's a certainty that we are the same thing as the rest of the universe. We are the fact of existence, but it often doesn't feel that way. We feel like, I am James. I am, as you say, the socially reinforced image of myself. And so when we feel like we have a head, we're actually going through quite a complex process of imagination, right? And this constructed image of what we are. And I think it's amazing that just from pointing out this simple fact, it seems to draw you into your experience in a way where all of that conceptualizing, thinking, remembering falls away. And then through just paying attention, you discover all of this kind of the interconnected nature of what you are, and that you really are everything, in the same way you were saying at different physical distances, you're different things. I think the same can be done in time, right? If you roll back and say, what was I before I was born, before I developed in the womb? Then I was, the sperm and the egg in two different people's bodies. And then where did they come from? They came from the food they ate that was, made them up. And they came from elements that were fused in exploding stars. And that all came from the Big Bang. And you realize, okay, there really isn't any solid James here. It's kind of zero and nothing and void in one sense, but it's also full of everything.
Well, yes, exactly. I'm rather amused. So, where do you come from, Richard? I think it was an explosion in Alpha Centauri. I think it was when two galaxies. You mean in my human? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you see, I think that when you grow up, you learn language. And your language is based on the I'm a person, you're a person structure. I see you means Richard sees you. And language reinforces your separate identity. I mean, it's built on it. There's really hardly any room for anything else. And that is totally appropriate. But when you wake up to your first person identity, which is obviously radically different from your third person identity, you need a new language to articulate that and to distinguish it from that experience from the third person. So if you grow up in a family that, speaks French and English, your mum is French and your dad is English, it's quite possible that you learn both languages, isn't it? And you start a sentence in French and finish it in English. Well, you can do that with these languages of first person and third person. I'm Richard and I'm space for the world. I've just switched languages between third person and first person. And the first person language is, third person is I'm face to face with you, James. First person is I'm face to no face. I have your face instead of my own. But third person is I'm sitting in a room in London, you see. First person is I'm not in a room in London. London is in me. First person is I'm still, and the kitchen will shortly arrive in me when I decide I want a cup of tea. See, but the third person is I'm going to have to get up and go and get to the kitchen. So when you understand both languages, you realize what's happening, and the first person is really easy to describe. People think, it's so difficult to talk about who you really are. I'd say, is it? Well, I don't see my head here. My hands disappear into space. My voice comes out of the great mystery now, out of the silence. Close my eyes, I make the world disappear, the cosmic shapes. Open them, recreate. I mean, it is rediscovery of the world, but it's very easy to describe, And the experiments, the pointing, the movement, the closed eye, the face to no face, it all bring it's available now 100%. You can't do it wrong. Look for your head down. Now, I say in language, I find nothing, no head here, space for the world. Now, can you see only half that space? Well, no, it's indivisible. Does it appear a little bit blurry some days, and then clearer on other days when you're having a good day? No, it's just the same. The world is a bit more blurry or clear. You see, the world is happy or sad, but here it's just absolutely the same and always available. And this is what brings us all together. And there's no hierarchy at this level. Everyone is looking out of one single eye, but we have a different view. But I do feel, and this is partly why I'm on this call with you, I do feel it's really important to talk about. It's really important to raise awareness in the world of our true identity. Get people to give them the opportunity to awaken to their true nature, and of course, let them do what they want with it. But wow, now we're talking about our common identity, aren't we, James? And we can see our different human identity. That's what makes it interesting. We're both one and many. You see, here we're both one and two. But because we've both done the experiments, we're both aware of the one consciousness in which this conversation is unfolding. Well, I mean, that is worth noting. One consciousness. That's very different from what we were, from our third person appearance.
And I mean, when we say one consciousness, it is both the same thing in both of us, but it's also differentiated into these two perspectives, right? It includes the kind of absolute, but also the relative perspectives.
Yes, well, you see, that's where each person will express it differently. I wouldn't have put it like that, but, of course I wouldn't, because I'm me and you're you, and my expression is different, and that's what's interesting. And I find in the headless community, because a lot of people I'm friends with who are aware of this, and the viewer or listener is welcome to join us in our free Zoom meetings. But I find that what is growing is an awareness that this is non-verbally the same experience, but we have a different view out, a different expression. And so that takes the heat off trying to say it right, or, well, I don't think that was quite right, James. I think that part of it was right, what you said there, but I'm not sure that that's, no. What you said was your way of putting that which we are both enjoying. And I respect your different way of putting it, and you respect mine. And there you go.
Yeah, I think the headlessness way is a very it is a really kind of unique contribution, I think, because it's so accessible, this fact of our experience, and it's almost amazing that no one before Douglas had kind of written this as a method of approaching these states, because I feel like I came to the same insight spontaneously as a teenager through kind of stress as a result of kind of theological rumination after kind of going to Catholic school. But I wouldn't have described it as having no head. If you'd asked me, it would have totally made sense. I would have said, when I read Douglas's work, I was like, okay, this is the same state. But I didn't think to describe it as having no head. But it was less about, a lot of Eastern religions will describe it as the loss of the self, which it is as well, or subject-object duality. But to me, because the head is absent, because the self is absent, it really is, as you say, kind of the discovery of the world. It's the absence isn't the interesting thing, really. It's the fullness that you discover, the connection with the world. To me, was the thing that the words I would use to language the experience.
Well, there you go. You see, and that opens up a new way of thinking about it for me. And everyone's story is different, and it's evolving. But yeah, I think it's a stroke of genius, really. It's the most simple thing. Back of it, in terms of what Douglas Harding wrote, is a huge amount of work. The book he wrote after he saw this is called The Hierarchy of Heaven and Earth. And there's two versions. There's a condensed version and there's the original big one. And they're both available on Amazon. The big original one, it was at the time, it was too big to publish. So he condensed it. And C.S. Lewis wrote an introduction for it, called it A Work of the Highest Genius. But the original one is just a major work of philosophy. It's extraordinary that it isn't better recognized. I've sent it to a number of philosophers, academics, and they're not interested. I mean, they're too busy. They've got papers to write. It would mean a huge amount of work to take on board this radically modern assessment of our place in the universe. I mean, it's a total breakthrough. I mean, it isn't just tinkering at the edges. It is a complete, fresh, science-based view, and it is really smart. I mean, he took 10 years to write it. I mean, 10 years of profound thinking and writing, and it's beautifully, clearly written. And then at the end, in the end, when I met him, he'd say, "Oh, you don't have to read that. Just look for your head." He recognized he had to do that. I mean, I love it. And academia, one day they'll say, "What were those other philosophers thinking about ignoring this? How embarrassing." There's this duel on the table. And, someone else who's quite a well-known speaker in this field of Advaita was asked about Douglas Harding, what he thought of it. He said, "Oh, he's an eccentric." I think you'll eat your words, mate, one day. This is so astonishing. But anyway, eventually he said, "Oh, you don't need to do that. Just because he recognized hardly anyone who's really interested in the real deep philosophy, how it makes sense. They just want to live from it." So when he was searching for this, he realized it got layers. And what is this mystery at the center of all these layers? And then he saw this picture by Ernst Mach, who drew a picture of himself in 1880 or something. And it was a first person view, headless, you see. And he looked at that picture and he looked at himself and said, right. Because he'd been trying to get to the center from outside, peeling away the layers. And how can you get to the center? It's a mystery. And then this picture, he looked at himself, I'm looking out of the center. I'm looking out of it. It's the most obvious thing, you see. So that picture, which many people have seen, but they sort of dismiss it as a kind of interesting thing, but meaningless, really. Douglas, it made sense to him, you see. But he was a very graphically visual person, and physical. He didn't want to just think about it. He wanted to see it. And there he saw it. And that was a breakthrough. And that, genius is, at root, is just being, well, I don't know what it is, but just to look and see, that means now anyone can see it. You don't have to read the book. Look for your head now. What are you looking out of? Now, if you need to make more sense of that, read more of Douglas's books or talk to friends. There's an awful lot. It's mature. The whole approach, Headless Way, is not some cranky thing that you can just dismiss. You look at what the work has been done on it since 1943 and before, actually. The book he wrote before, there's several books he wrote before. You think this is solid gold, yeah.
Yeah,
Do you get the feeling that I am enthusiastic about
absolutely.
This?
And rightly so, I think. I would encourage people to search for Ernst Mach, who was this Australian physicist, I think, right? ERNST.
Austrian.
Oh, sorry, Austrian, yeah. M-A-C-H
Get
is
your
how you spell
facts
it.
right,
Sorry,
James.
that was a verbal mistake rather than a conceptual one. And yeah, if you search for self-portrait by him, you'll find this picture, which is amazing. Of you see the kind of bridge of his nose and his like handlebar moustache and his brow. But it's when I saw that picture actually before I came to Douglas Harding's work, and I was immediately kind of gripped by it. It seemed like such an ingenious thing to do because it's a self-portrait, and that's
I'm
how
going to
it actually look.
interrupt. Yeah, I did a workshop in this place in America a few years back. It was Brighton Bush. It's up in Oregon. It's a hot spa. There are these spas amongst the trees. It's a beautiful place. And the advert, for there was a poster on the door for the meeting, and it had this picture of Ernst Mach on it, right? You see, now I'd already gone, and the poster was still there with this picture of Ernst Mach, and this lady, Christine, visited this Brighton Bush place, and she saw this picture on the door. And that was the moment when she realized her true nature. She turned around and she walked out the door, and you look out from this huge wooden building that's in the middle of the woods, and you look out into the trees, and she just saw, I am headless, I'm space of the trees. Just the picture.
Yeah, it's very powerful. And you were saying it's up to everyone to discover this for themselves, and I respect a lot of what you were saying. The characteristic in Douglas Harding that he could write huge books on these things, but then he was always about stripping it down to the actual core point. It wasn't a kind of it seemed like a very sincere attempt to communicate. I'm always skeptical when I attend a lecture on something like the science of consciousness, and then it begins with, well, I've only got an hour here, and I couldn't even begin to scratch 10% of what my thoughts on the thing. Like, okay, this is some kind of, this isn't someone who wants to actually communicate the core of what
the Headless Way, we call it it's like the McDonald's of the spiritual class: fast, cheap, and takeaway. Someone says to you, "Can you share my true nature with me?" I mean, how do I? I don't have much time. I say, "How long have you got?" I've only got 5 minutes. Oh, easy, half a minute.
But more nourishing, I would say. Yeah. But so I think it's up to people to investigate this themselves. But I think you and I, from listening to talks you've given, and I think we agree about certain features we notice about our experience when we do pay attention, right? So first, there's this real recognition that we have no head, and that if some people may just see that and then drop it immediately and say, so what, what's the big deal?
It's so wild, isn't it? But we've agreed that neither of us have a head. I mean, how wild and weird and wonderful is that? But we know what we're talking about.
Right. And then, I mean, it is wonderful because if you sit with that and if you can kind of rest into it, as you say, you discover that there is a spaciousness in which everything is appearing, and it's appearing out of nothingness. You mentioned earlier that kind of sounds appear out of the silence, out of the great mystery. It really connects you with the kind of awe at existence. There's just this potent void that everything seems to be arising out of. And at your center, you are this unchanging stillness, this kind of unborn, undying fact of being, or whatever words you want to put on it. And if you identify with that, then that never changes. There's no matter what happens, thoughts arise, feelings arise, but it's fundamentally unperturbed. It's fundamentally free. So yeah, I would definitely describe it as wonderful.
Well, yes. I mean, there's a little story by Rumi, that the wise man or woman, I suppose, wears out shoes of iron, traveling from Hind to Sind, all their life, looking for one other person who knows who they are and probably doesn't find them, And now here we are hanging out. I've never met you before. We're hanging out at the press of a button, enjoying our true nature together. I mean, this is extraordinary and wonderful. I mean, and it's direct access. This isn't about, having a pet theory that we both, agree on, although your actual thing you said at the end is I don't, all of that. It's not that. It's this basic, wonderful, extraordinary, astonishing at times experience. Not always. It's a neutral experience in essence, but at times you say, well, that's, I have space for the world. I mean, slow down on that one. That is incredible. If I'm really space for the world and I have to check it out and not believe it, which I am the world. You say, well, now that changes everything. I mean, how am I going to, am I going to take this seriously in my life or not? Well, I mean, it's up to you, but I'm taking it as seriously as I can and as playful as I can and seeing where it takes me, and it's the truth, is it the truth? Well, check it out, you see, and you're in a perfect location to see whether or not you're a thing up against others and the world, or you're nothing full of others and the world. It changes everything, I mean, all the conflict that we all know about so well at the moment, it's so painful, that you can see how the face-to-face, just being aware of that point of view of confrontation, it's important, but by God, we've taken it to its limit, haven't we? We need to come to our senses as a species before we kill each other. We've got to come to our senses and see that we're space for each other. We're space for each other. We are each other. Now, this doesn't mean you deny keep out of my country or whatever, but now you're including, you personally listening to this now, you're including awareness of your true nature, and now see how that affects how you respond. And it's not saying you have to respond in this way or that. It's saying you are the authority now, but be awake to your true nature and live from it. And I say share it. The more you share it, the more it comes alive in you.
Right, and I've heard you describe it as we're built open for the world, and this idea of kind of this openness and connection seems to be a fundamental aspect. I've also heard you mention kind of the concept of friendliness, and it feels like a very friendly way to be. So, do you think this is, the more we spread this, it will have positive changes on how people live in the world?
Oh, without question, without question. It's a major change in consciousness, and the effects come slowly, and there's no guarantee that it will all end well on this planet. Who knows? But the vision, the awareness of your true nature is 100% now. Now you do everything you can to alleviate the suffering in the world, but don't overlook who you really are, where you're coming from. You see, that is, I mean, it's just true. Now, I notice, I've been doing this for more than 50 years, and I notice the changes in the people I know who are living from this. So this is not an abstract idea of changing consciousness. I am aware of a growing community of people I know, and I'll meet, I go to, quite a number of Zoom meetings each week to keep in touch with people who are living from this. So I see how this is gradually affecting the way that they think about themselves and relate to each other and the world. And that change is slow, but as all genuine change like that is slow. And who knows where it's going to go? And I don't know where it's going to go, but you can see the direction. So my passion is to make this available to more and more people, let them do what they want, but also to offer a hand of friendship, because I think it was the Buddha said, when asked what the holy life was, he said, the holy life is friendship. He said, the whole of the holy life is friendship. He didn't say that's an important part, It's the whole of it. Well, that's really interesting, isn't it? This is how you relate to others. And the Sangha, the community of people who are living from this, is a real thing. And you can be part of it if you want. And yeah, hugely powerful. What could be more powerful in your life than waking up to who you really are, that you're the source of the world? I mean, what could be, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what's on TV. I mean, okay, I'm interested in what's on in TV, but who you really are, spend some time with it, and explore it. And,
Yeah. I wonder if you could give us a little bit more of a guided tour of our true nature, because when we look from this way of having no head, there's this sense in which it's not, we're used to quantifying things in a relative way, that's bigger than that. But in this space, it just doesn't make sense. I've heard you talk about how wide is it, you can't say, and perhaps you could speak a bit on that.
All right. Okay, here's a little guided meditation, if you like. So notice you can't see your head, and instead you see the view, the world. Now, look at two objects in the field of view and compare them for size. And one is bigger than the other, probably. You see, and look at two other objects. It's relative. An object that is bigger than, another object might be smaller than the third object. So it's relative. Now you look at the whole field of view, which you can see fades out all the way around. We call it single eye. It's a single view. Now, how big is that view? Well, there isn't a second on the right to compare it with. It's single. We call it single eye. It's single. So you can't say how wide it is. I mean, it's not why my single eye isn't sort of wider than James's. I can't see James's. The only one I hear about it, and he gives me the same information. It's single. It's a great mystery. But anyway, so I can't say how big the view is. So we start visually. Also, if you look at any object, I'm looking at a chair, it's inside the room. It's surrounded by other objects, or the clock, or the TV. It's in an environment. So it's inside the room. Then you look at the whole field of view. Is it inside anything? Well, I mean, I'm looking at the TV, and it's got a pretty clear boundary around it, and all the way around it are, there's a wall above it, and a cupboard to the left, and the floor below, right? So now you look at the whole view, and it fades out. Well, now look at view. You can only look directly at the center of the view. That's in focus, and it's peripherally it loses focus or something, doesn't it? And it fades out. I mean, just become aware peripherally of the edge, you see, as well as the center. So you're taking in the whole view. No, it's a weird edge because, I mean, there's nothing above it, nothing below it, and nothing to the left and nothing to the right. So it's not inside anything. Everything is within the view, but it's not contained, or it's in consciousness. But consciousness isn't a thing. See? So we start visually. You can't say how big the view is. It's not inside anything. I mean, you can't say where it is or how far away it is. I mean, you measure the distance between two objects in your field of view. You estimate, 3 feet, 10 feet between. Now you look at the whole view. How far away from the whole view are you? Well, there's nowhere to measure from. Anywhere you measure from is within the view. So it's either no distance or it's infinite distance. It's right here or right there. So those are 3 simple observations about the visual, but you then can jump from that into the non-visual. So you close your eyes, you see, and you're aware of a kind of darkness. Well, how big is the darkness? Well, there isn't a second, you see, to compare it with. So how wide is it? Well, it could be as wide as the night sky, or as wide as an atom. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't have there's nothing to compare it with. Yeah. I take that seriously. And now, is it inside anything? I mean, they say, well, that's how you've closed your eyes, you're behind your eyes, you're inside an 8-inch across, meatball head. It's very, very small there. Oh, well, you see, how big is it inside anything? Well, I don't find anything above the darkness or below it or to the left. It's not. It's in consciousness, just like the visual view was. See? All right. Well, now we go to the other senses. See, the sounds are coming and going, and if I can call it the field of sound, the sound of my voice probably the loudest, and you might get traffic sounds in the background or tinnitus, all these different sounds going on in your awareness. Now, how big is the whole field of sound? Well, you see, I can't, there isn't a second field of sound to compare it with. So single. So I can't say how big it is. Is it inside anything, a container, an echo chamber, a head? No, it's in silence. My voice is coming out of silence now, you see. And however much sound there is, it does not obscure the silence. The sounds come out of the silence, go back into it, you see. So we've got the darkness and the sounds and the darkness are happening in the same consciousness. They're not in separate spaces, Well, then you bring your attention to your body sensations, and I think it's helpful to think of yourself as a baby. So you just for the moment put aside your images of yourself, which are memory, aren't they? Very important, very important. But just for the moment, put them aside. Now, that sensation you call your back, without memory, you see, your imagination, how long is it? Well, how big is the whole field of sensation? Well, there isn't a second to compare it with. And what shape is it? In other words, what shape are you? Well, are you inside anything? I'm not. All these sensations, what I identify with, are not inside anything. Sensations coming and going in this space that the sounds are happening in, and the darkness, you see. I can't say how big I am, or what shape I am. And then, of course, thoughts and feelings going on all the time, your reactions. I mean, think of a number, there's a thought. Imagine the face of a friend, see? And remember what you had for breakfast or something, or what you felt when you got up, or what you feel about, I don't know, tragedies in the world. There's feelings. Now, how big is this whole field of mind, of thoughts and feelings? Which, we assume it's only about 8 inches across, it's separate from the world, it's inside me, and, but on present evidence, this field of mind, I find there isn't a second one to compare it with. How wide is it? I think some traditions call it big mind, don't they? Big mind. And is this field of thinking and feeling separate from the sounds you're hearing and this, or the sensation? Aren't they happening all in the same awareness, you see? And however much you're thinking does not obscure your no mind, the space. The thoughts come out of it. You don't have to stop thinking in order to be aware of the place your thoughts come from, which is this space that my voice is coming from, see? So, how big are you? You see, are you contained? I say, I cannot say how big I am. I am not inside anything. Everything is in me, coming out of me. Now that, you see, is a very different identity from your social self, which is very important. So you have both. But don't overlook your true identity, which we're sharing. I mean, your thoughts and feelings are different from mine, but how can you have a different space, you see? Well, because you've got no name on it, no nationality and all of that. It's a great mystery, you see, that we're one of many. So that is showing that this is available, whether you've got your eyes open or closed, whether you're attending to what you see or hear or think or feel or smell, you see, or taste. It is available now. And you just keep your eyes closed for a moment longer. People say, well, how can I stabilize this? What does that mean, you see? Because your true nature is not in time, is it? How can you stretch it out? You can only be aware of it now. Now be aware of it now. Notice it is just complete in terms of the essence. What's coming out of it is partial, but where it's coming from is complete. And you're home and dry, you see. And now open your eyes, you see, and magically you create the world again in the great space. But you haven't changed. You're still this mystery. And aware of yourself also as an individual in the world.
That was wonderful. Thank you. And something that arises when we do this, when we pay attention, I think, is that thoughts that we tend to think of as happening inside us are actually appearing in the same space as vision. They're appearing where the world is appearing.
Yes. And this is a developmental thing too. When you're growing up, you're not yet aware, when you're very young, that your thoughts are in your head and that others have thoughts in their head. And this is called theory of mind, that there comes a point when you realize that others do not know what you're thinking. And the way that that is explained is that your thoughts are in your head. So of course they can't see what you're thinking. They're private. And this is an important developmental stage when you realize others do not know what you're thinking and feeling. You can keep secrets, you can even lie. Within reason, this is a very positive development. It's the emergence of your sense of separateness. Now, at the same time, as you take that on board, you apply the same to others. You look at someone's face and now head, you see, and now you think, oh, they must have thoughts inside there like I've got in here, you see. Now, this is the theory of mind, because you don't ever experience any thoughts but your own. But you now develop the theory that your thoughts are in your head and their heads contain thoughts, right? So now we've got many minds in theory, but you take that on board. Now, a friend of mine, Sam, he developed the appropriate description, the theory for stage 4 of the seer, which is the theory of no mind. Because, I can't see the void where you are, except it's everywhere, but if we say that, how do I know, that you're looking out of emptiness? Well, you tell me. I don't know it 100%. I only know that you're in me and it makes sense. But now I have two theories. I've got a theory of mind, right, that you've got a mind there, but now I have a theory that your mind there is coming out of no mind. I think that's brilliant. The theory of no mind. Psychologists, wake up, wake up. You're missing the boat.
And then when it comes to, you mentioned people often ask how to kind of stabilize this. And my instinct is that you need to know this is something, as you say, that's already there. It's already your nature. And we still continue to love our lives as relative separate individuals, but it's to come into alignment, find a balance between these two. Do you kind of advise certain ways for people to practice? Like, do they kind of just return to this insight of headlessness and integrate it into their lives more and more? What do you advise?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, just to go back to how it affects how you are in your life, if you suddenly discovered that in your bank account there was 10 billion pounds, right? Now, that would affect the way that you operate in the world, wouldn't it? It would. Now, you'd be a lot more generous, hopefully, Now, do you have to keep every minute checking on your phone that you've still got 10 billion pounds, and you don't. That's established. That's who you are now. You're extremely rich. Well, wake up to your eyes is 10 billion pounds is chicken feed. It's nothing. You've got, Alpha Centauri is in your back pocket. The whole thing is yours. Now, do you have to keep checking up to see if you don't? But you do because you enjoy it. Oh, I'm just going to have a look to see if I've got 10, because it's fun. I'm just going to look to see if I am the one, if I still own Alpha Centauri. Say, oh, I do. Yes. I don't know what it's worth, but anyway, it's much more playful and enjoyable than a program of oh, I better do all these steps to stabilize it. It's stable in you. Just keep returning to it. And the more you return to it, the more it will seep into your life. Now, one of the, obviously read the books, explore its meaning. That's one thing. But the other thing is, as I say, is, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the three jewels, isn't it? Well, the Sangha is really important. Why is the Sangha important? The community of people living from the truth. Because it's infectious. Because it's fun. Because you learn from others. Because it is the one becoming many and talking about being the one, being many. So I say to people, if you want to enjoy this in your life, I mean, if you have a hobby, it's a lot more fun and you learn a lot more if you join a club, right? Well, you've got a new hobby, which is living from who you really are. Now join a club, of people who are, enjoying who they are. Come and join a Zoom meeting, or whatever. If you want to play, if you want to have friends to share this with. I mean, I consider you a friend, James, in the sense that we are valuing this, and we, at least for this hour, we want to hang out together, and hopefully at other times enjoy that immensely. You see, this is if you want to stabilize it, well, come along to the stable.
Yeah, I think I love the way, you're approaching this is in this kind of this mode of friendship and kind of a non-hierarchical, just it's not like you're signing up to a group with a guru with rules and
I'm going to jump in, because I did a workshop in Australia. Some good friends there, and I think it was the first time I'd been on the western side of Australia in Perth. And these almost completely blind couple invited me to do, present the seeing there. And so I did. And we were in their big room, you see, and there were chairs in a sort of, semicircle. And I was in the corner, my chair was in the corner. And I was sitting there as people were coming in. And my good friend Sam and his wife Mary, they came, and they were friends of Pete and Pearl, you see. And they do an enormous amount of work for free with the website and publishing. They want to support sharing the seeing. Anyway, I was sitting in the corner, this is years ago, sitting in the corner waiting for the workshop to begin. And Sam came in and he looked at me in the corner and he said to his wife, said, "Oh, look, that guy doesn't know that that's where the teacher sits." Because he said, the most impressive thing about you, Richard, was how unimpressive you were. In other words, it's not, once you share this, you can't, sit up with the flowers next to you and the portrait of Ramana Maharshi next to you. You're on the same level. We're talking about friends, equals here, aren't we? It's not a guru-disciple thing. As soon as you've shared it, job done, good to go.
Yeah, I think you can kind of contrast it with, an approach that might be, years of meditation and looking inwards and all of this kind of study versus, the paradox of that approach is you're trying to look for something that is very readily available. It's right here. It's fully formed. There's nothing to do. It's And so I think as a very simple method, it's a wonderful approach. And maybe to end on something positive, if we talk about death and the implications, because I think I think it is positive what you discover. I think I saw a video of Douglas Harding talking about this and saying, the difference, realizing you are not what you look like, and saying, looking in the mirror and saying, like, thank God, like, I'm not him. He's going to die. He's a terminal case. I'm from where I am as the unborn. I don't have to worry about that.
Yes, I know. It's a paradox, isn't it? Because I do remember asking Douglas once, about death, and he said, well, I'd rather not die. It's not like you don't care or you don't have feelings, but as you say, you are coming from the deathless. Now, that makes all the difference. I mean, Richard is still going to die, obviously. But how do I cope with that, you see? Well, sometimes quite badly. But nevertheless, I'm coming from this deathless place. I've got all the tools I need to cope as well as I can. And there is an extraordinary thrill to wake up to the fact that you're not going to die. That everything is in you and it will change radically at some point, and who knows what will emerge. But the space, the nature of the space is it cannot stop being creative. People say, well, how do you know when you die that you'll still be the space and there will still be something in it? Well, I say, well, I mean, that's the nature of the beast. For sure, I'll find out, but I've no doubt about that, from present evidence. And I am going, you've been told for so many years that you'll die and there'll be nothing, and not even nothing, because you won't know even that there's nothing, or other stories about what will happen, you see. And then you discover this, this truth that is just so thrilling and so beautiful and real and checkable up on in the moment, and so generous and so loving, really, and it doesn't deny all the terrible suffering in the world, but it's bigger than that and includes that and is part of that. You see, and the great contribution of Christianity is that God came down and incarnated and didn't sit up in heaven, detached. Did, but also came down right into a manger and lived a life, the life we all live, and got crucified, Now, that is a symbol, an image, a metaphor for being both completely free and completely involved, not a bypass, And so it leads to a far more involved a life, and hopefully a more compassionate, more involved, responsive life. It does in all my friends, and hopefully in myself. I see that this opens the door to involvement, but from this place of deep assurance and deep communality with every being, and deep confidence somehow. Yeah. So death, where is thy sting? You know that one, Douglas? St. Paul, of course. Death, where is your sting? Grave, where is your victory? As if, that death wins. And you say, oh, it's about 3 feet away. That's where the sting is, you see. And that, the victory is there in the cemetery. But here, death cannot reach. And this is a fact. And yay, hooray. Yeah.
I think you're saying we have this image of when we die, there's nothing, but I think we really struggle to when we think of what nothing is, we almost imagine, James in some form continuing to exist in some dark void and shut off from everything and, some sad, lonely thing, whereas actually nothing is no thing. And the flip side of that is everything. So if I stop existing, well, everything else is still going on. And so I think that's when you pay attention to your experience and you start to realize you are this basic creative principle of existence, it's, there's nothing. The thing that strikes me is it completely fits with science. There's nothing supernatural going on here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the whole message, anyway, is check this out for yourself. Don't believe me or James. Look for yourself, and don't even believe yourself from 5 minutes ago. Have a look now again at the place you're looking out of. So this is radically empirical. But as you say, I mean, it makes sense of science. It is a scientific view that is far more sensible than the current one, actually.
Yeah, no, I would agree. So thanks so much for your time. This has been really, really wonderful. Where would you send people to if they want to take part in the meetings or connect with your work in any other way?
Well, my email address is headexchange@gn.apc.org, but you'll find that on the website, which is headless.org. And we have, many Zoom meetings free each week. And if you email me, I'll send you information. It's not generally publicly available because we want people who come to have done the experiments. So it's not just, strangers dropping in who have no idea at all about what it is. It is people who've got some understanding of what. But there's also lots of books and audio books and lots on our YouTube channel, Head Exchange. So there's an awful lot out there. But you will find my address on the website. So do feel welcome to email me. But thank you, James. And I feel I've made yet another friend. And,
yeah, same here.
Yeah, marvelous. And you're in London, and I've started meetings here at home, and there's one at the beginning of April. You're very welcome to come. It's a Saturday morning, it's free, and there's a limit of about a dozen, so if you're interested, you can.
Sounds great, yeah.
Yeah, I'll send you the details, and then, if you're interested in meeting others,
Great,
you can.
thank you. Great, thanks again, Richard.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you want to help the podcast reach a wider audience, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Finally, if you want to offer financial support, you can go to patreon.com/Dr. James Cook.